Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. So San Diego here, along with Alex Anderson from the Gay Racing Podcast here for the special NASCAR Championship weekend, and Isha Azim from Racing with Isha. Big happy birthday to Isha, and we want to give everyone a friendly reminder. You could invest in the Grid Network through Patreon, or you could do a one-time contribution to Buy Me Coffee or the YouTube Super Chat. Put there who you want to send it to. If you want to give Isha a birthday coffee or a super chat, just mention it in the comment and we'll forward it to her. And of course, any to Alex as well and any of our Grid Network team members. Now, Isha, as I mentioned, this is a big weekend for NASCAR. The championship weekend is finally here, and finally, this long season is coming towards the end.
Yes, Joe. As you mentioned, the final race of the 2023 season is here, and for NASCAR, it's the championship round. Now, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron all enter with a chance at the championship. The highest finisher of the four wins the championship. Now, since introducing this playoff format, the winner of the race has been a championship four contender. Kyle Larson won the championship back in 2021. William Byron won the spring race here. Christopher Bell is making his second consecutive championship four appearance, and Ryan Blaney is making his first appearance. Now, Alex, we'll start with you. Do you see any clear favorite for the championship?
I really don't, Isha. I think this could be any of the four. And over on my podcast, the Garrison podcast, I kind of laid it out. It depends on what you consider most important. So for Ryan Blaney, if you consider momentum to be the most important thing, Blaney's probably your favorite. If you consider Kyle Larson to be your favorite, you probably favor skill. If you could prioritize speed, you're probably looking at William Byron. And if you're looking at Christopher Bell, you probably like consistency the most. It's just all four have different, unique skill types, I think, going into this race based on how their season have gone. It could go any way. If you want to go stat-wise, within this car, the Gen 7 car, Ryan Blaney has the best average finish by quite a lot, actually. But I mean, anything can happen. I'm looking forward to it. I am so excited. I've never been so excited for a Phoenix race ever, I don't think. So, I mean, anyone can do it. If I had to lean any way, it'd be Ryan Blaney based on recency. I think he has the. I would favor momentum. I honestly would. And his stats at Phoenix don't lie.
Momentum is huge for Ryan Blaney. I agree. He has the momentum. We know that team, he's been good at Phoenix with this current generation car. He's going to have everyone at Team Penske behind him. The one thing, though, I'm also looking at, the pit crews. We know they play big roles here when it comes to the pit crew. Christopher Bell's team, especially that pit crew was Ty Gibbs' pit crew in the regular season. They won the pit crew competition in North Wilkesboro. They've had their moments where they didn't look that great, but they could deliver some great pit stops here and there. I think they could position Christopher Bell to be in a good spot, but we know, I think William Byron has one of the best pit crews of everybody, and we can't forget how Kyle Larson won his championship, a stellar pit crew in 2021, got into the championship. So overall, the pit crew, I think, are going to play a big factor, and that's why I agree with you, Alex. I don't see a clear favorite because all four of them are capable of running towards the front. The pit crew is going to have a huge say on this. The timing of the cautions we've seen before, a late caution towards the end, so it's going to come down to that money stop. And as you said, all the four drivers have different stats. The one thing I hear a lot of people talk about William Byron being the favorite because he won here earlier. No driver has swept any racetracks this year. None of them. So that doesn't guarantee Byron, I think, is an easy favorite. I think it's still so up in the air, and I think this could be one of the tightest championship fours in quite some time.
And I will say, Joe, that Byron, if there's a late race like caution and restart, William Byron's definitely favored in that situation because most of his wins this year have come from that scenario, I feel. So I don't know if he's the favorite. Like I said, I don't think any of the four are the favorite. I've heard all four of them being like, oh yeah, that's the favorite, obviously. No idea what's going to happen tomorrow. No idea.
And Alex, as you mentioned, each of the four drivers has their own skill set. So, it really could go home with any of the drivers. And we have the same four drivers and teams contending in the Owners' Championship. So there's no potential split among the championship. All the drivers in the championship four have teammates not in the championship. Larson and Byron have Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott. Christopher Bell has Gibbs, Hamlin, and Truex. Blaney has Joey Logano and Austin Cindric. So, Joe, starting with you for this question, we have not seen teammates play a big role in past championship races. Could that change this weekend?
I don't anticipate too much of a change compared to past years. I don't anticipate a driver going out there and blatantly trying to run another championship driver up high or potentially try to wreck them. They're going to make life difficult, of course. We remember a few years ago, it was particularly Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch. Those two got it in Homestead. And one of the things was when Denny Hamlin mentioned about that after the championship race was over and those two were in the press conference while Jimmy Johnson was celebrating. Kevin Harvick said, Kyle Busch was racing me like a clown. Your teammates were doing that all day, so I wrecked him. Overall, I think when it comes to the Hendrick teammates, they got fast cars up there. I don't think they're going to be really worried about it. Joey Logano could be a little bit of a wild card. He races everyone hard, though. It doesn't matter if it's at Darlington earlier in the year, the All-Star race. He's always known for, if you're ahead of me, you're my enemy. If you're behind me, you're my buddy. So I think that's going to be one of the drivers that could be a little bit of the wild card. Then Joe Gibb racing. I don't see Denny Hamlin could be the spoiler, not to try to wreck person or make life miserable for somebody, but I think he's motivated to go out there and get the win. Because after all, if it wasn't for that bad luck at Homestead, he'd probably be in this picture.
Yeah, Joe, I agree with you on what you said about how I don't think the teammates will play a huge factor. They might be like trying to make their life difficult for the other drivers out there. I am interested to see how Hendrick Motorsports plays a part because we've seen at Daytona when they were trying to get Bowman and Elliott in, they separated the teammates into who was helping who. Like one, Byron was helping one, and Larson was helping the other. I forget who was who, but you might see something like that again happen this weekend with them. But then when you have look at Joe Gibbs racing, Christopher Bell, he has three of his teammates available, and then Ryan Blaney, of course, has two, as same thing as Hendrick. So I'm not sure. That's gonna be very interesting. But I think Joey Logano, as you mentioned, Joe, that is going to be. Joey Logano has a bit of reputation for racing a bit hard, and we saw last year Ryan Blaney probably had the best car at Phoenix in this race, and he was right behind Joey Logano. So if Ross Chastain ended up catching Logano a year ago, Blaney was right there, and I don't think he would have let Chastain by. So, yeah, these teammates, I sure would not want to be in third with Logano second, Blaney first, going into the late laps of this race.
And now, if we take a look at the format, so while this format of the playoffs guarantees a big emphasis on the championship annually, several storylines are entering this race. The main one is this being Kevin Harvick's last race as a full time Cup Series driver. In 2001, Harvick was chosen to drive Dale Earnhardt's car after Earnhardt's tragic passing. Now, Harvick will end his career as the 2014 Cup Series champion and a 60-time race winner. Kevin Harvick became known as a master of the Phoenix Raceway. However, his last win here was in 2018. Now, Joe, you've seen Kevin Harvick enter his first Cup Series race and now enter his final race. How significant was his presence in the Cup Series?
Overall, he had a very significant role in the Cup Series, and I think a lot of people they remember what he did after taking over the GM Goodwrench car for Dale Earnhardt. That was a dark day for the sport, and then 3 races later, he gets his first win at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I felt he was really sort of more of a transition driver rather than a traditional Cup Series driver. The Cup Series, then a lot of people were known for being from the South, sort of mild manner. We didn't see a whole lot of tempers, especially in the late 90s when there was a lot of corporations, especially big Fortune 500 corporations coming into NASCAR because they saw the value of advertising. Kevin Harvick got into some trouble. He ruffled feathers. He was very controversial to points where some fans really loved him, some fans didn't stand him. He always had that aggression, and you see that in a lot of the modern NASCAR drivers that we're seeing today. He is the last driver to race under the Winston Cup era. I think that's going to be a huge, significant change when you consider that all the other drivers, especially as we get further and further into this playoff format, it's a much different culture out there when it comes to the drivers, the respect level that they give on and off the track. I think Kevin Harvick will be very much missed. His significant presence in the Cup Series goes much farther than I think a lot of people say, though. talk about what he did at RCR and the sport, but after the track passing of Dale Earnhardt. But I think throughout his entire career, he really influenced a lot of the younger drivers that we're seeing coming up and looked up by many.
For sure. And for me, Kevin Harvick has been a part of the NASCAR Cup Series as long as I can remember. Um, I've never really watched NASCAR without him being a part of it. I mean, I've watched my whole life. I started like gaining consciousness like in 2002, 2001. So I mean, like he's just always kind of been there. And it's going to be really weird not having him out there. He's going to be a part of the Fox booth next year, so we'll still see him around and hear from him, which will be great. And I think we need to hear his voice. I think he's really become a leader in the garage and with the drivers and being vocal about things when things aren't right. And if things are good, he's also stating those things. But Kevin Harvick has always been just a phenomenal competitor. I mean, no matter what, he's always a threat. Like they call him the closer for a reason. He has 60 career wins. And last year, when SHR, Stewart-Haas Racing, they weren't running very well, he ends up getting 2 wins in a row right before the playoffs. It was like, oh my God, Kevin Harvick might be a championship threat now. Like they let him get these wins right before the playoffs. Like that's crazy. That didn't end up happening. But like Harvick is just a tremendous racer. And even late in his career, 2020 was not that long ago. He ended up getting, I believe, 9 wins that year. I mean, the guy still got it. I think Stewart-Haas Racing, they kind of declined a bit later in half of his career here, but I'm going to miss seeing him out there. I'm so glad we're going to have him on Sunday still. And as you said, Joe, I mean, he had to replace Dale Earnhardt, who, right alongside Jeff Gordon, that was the biggest name in the sport at that time. And going out and winning Atlanta just 3 races later is unbelievable. Like, and he beat Jeff Gordon, by the way, who was Dale Earnhardt's longtime rival. Like that, incredible just to think about. And like he's gonna go into the Hall of Fame, 100% when he's eligible. Just what a career. And I'm very happy he's getting the respect he's very well deserving of in the last few races here.
Yes, he's a very impressive racer, and it's just going to be very interesting to see what happens. And now let's shift over to some changes that we'll see in 2024. So next year, Josh Berry will move into the number 4 that Kevin Harvick is leaving at Stewart-Haas Racing. Eric Almirola is also leaving Stewart-Haas Racing. The number 10 car does not have an announced driver at this time. Carson Hocevar will replace Ty Dillon in the 77 at Spire Motorsports. Zane Smith will be joining Spire as well as a brand new 3rd car. Now, Colleague Racing enters its last race weekend with Justin Haley driving for them as he moves to Rick Ware Racing. So, Joe, of all these changes coming in 2024, which one excites you the most or has the most promise?
I think I'm looking at surprisingly, I would not say this at the beginning of the year, Spire Motorsports with Carson Hocevar. And when you look at what that team has done this year, particularly with the number 7 over there at Corey LaJoy, they have been improving. They've been getting top 10 finishes here and there. They've been capitalizing on opportunities. And I think what they got going right now, especially with this big sponsor from Gamebridge, getting Carson Hocevar, that has me excited. I know the Truck Series race, we saw another side Carson Hocevar, but I think that was a big learning moment for him. So I don't anticipate that's going to be a long-term issue. But overall, I feel excited mostly about that because I'll be honest, right now with Stewart-Haas Racing, I do feel like this is a team that is struggling. So whoever we see in that 10 car, I don't think it's going to be coming in like a Kevin Harvick and then they're getting wins after wins. I think it's going to be a slow year of just building up. Let's get top 20s, then top 10s, and then maybe get for wins at the super speedways. But I say that is a big one I'm really most excited about.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Joe. I think Carson Hocevar going to the 77 is going to be so exciting. He has been very impressive in the 42 car over at Legacy Motor Club. When a few starts he's made over there, running top 10s. I think he ran as high as in top 5 at Bristol at a point. But I'm really thinking about Zane Smith, who is in alliance with Trackhouse. So that 3rd Spire car is kind of going to be a Trackhouse built car. I'm very curious to see how he will do because, I mean, he won the Truck Series Championship a year or 2 ago, and I think he's a very impressive driver. Zane Smith is. So he and Hocevar aspire in a team that is growing. They have the backing of Gainbridge. They have a lot of money going into that team. I'm very curious to see how both of them do, but Zane Smith and Hocevar, I don't think they'll make the playoffs next year, but they might have a shot. Honestly, they might have a shot on points because Corey LaJoy wasn't too far out of it. Like he was around 20th, I believe, before Daytona. So don't count them out next year. I don't think they'll win races or make the playoffs, but that's going to be a lot of fun to watch those two.
Definitely. And speaking of changes, another change for next year is that Daniel Hemrick will take over for Haley in the 31. Now, there has been no official announcement about AJ Allmendinger. But do you guys think that the Hemrick and Allmendinger combo is a good enough combination for next year? Joe, what do you think?
I'm not convinced. I mean, Allmendinger, the road course wins, we anticipate that. Finally got one at the Roval. This year seems to be a struggle, so you could hope that next year he'll be better, maybe closer for the championship, get a road course win in the regular season. He's in the playoffs. Hemrick, though, I mean, we all know how he has one win, and it came when he needed that championship win. Can he deliver? I think he's going to need to have a good crew chief, good cars weekends and week out. I'm not convinced that that'll be the case. Really, colleague, I think as much as they're improving, they still got some steps to do before they could get to the point where they could consistently go for race wins.
Yeah, colleague, not good. Even if they keep AJ Allmendinger in Cup, which I don't think they're going to do, I think Allmendinger's going to go back to Xfinity next year. This is rough. I mean, this used to be the team that was like super hyped up about coming up to Cup, but now they kind of got replaced by Trackhouse in 2311. You kind of forget they're out there. And I think you're going to forget even more so that they're out there when you have Daniel Hemrick, who, all respect to him, he can keep a car clean, he can finish races, but he's going to be running around in the 20s, late, lower teens, maybe mid 20s. And then if you get rid of Allmendinger, move him back to Xfinity, I mean, you're going to lose all your opportunities on the road courses. So I just don't like where Colleague Racing's heading. It seems like a lot of the money's being pulled out internally and they're looking for outside sponsorship. And that's kind of the reason Allmendinger might not be coming back next year. That's kind of what Allmendinger has said and what Matt Colleague has said. But this would be a better pairing than what the rumors are saying. I don't know. I hope the best for them, but I don't see next year being a very good season for Colleague Racing.
Now, this is also the last time that we'll see the iconic number 43 in a Chevrolet, as next year it will become a Toyota for the first time. This will bring Toyota to the 8 full-time teams in 2023. Now, Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek will be in the 43 and 42 for Legacy Motor Club. So overall, how would you rate the first season of Legacy Motor Club, Alex?
The first half of the season was a negative 12 out of 10 for Legacy Motor Club. But then sometime in the summer, or late summer, they started clicking. It was kind of bizarre. Eric Jones started running well, and then they got Carson Hocevar in the 42 running in the top 5 out of nowhere. Very bizarre. They're in their last year with Chevrolet. They probably aren't getting as much information and all these parts and everything. Like it, I don't know what happened there. Very bizarre. They started running well, but the second half of the season, they very solid. Eric Jones was in contention at Darlington and Kansas. Hocevar running very well for a rookie. And second half of the season, I'd give him like a 6 out of 10 just because, they're not setting the roll on fire or anything, but very impressive. But Jimmy Johnson should be very proud, I think, because this has been very remarkable for him to be a team owner and to have this sort of rebrand of Petty and GMS coming in as well. But overall, I think they have a lot to look forward to moving to Toyota next year. I think they're going to be running as good as they have late this season with Toyota next year. And it'll be interesting to see how they work on the super speedways as well, specifically with 2311 and Gibbs next year. I'm looking forward to it.
When it comes to Legacy Motor Club, I felt this season has to be a huge disappointment considering last year they had the win of the Southern 500 with Eric Jones. They got Jimmy Johnson coming in. Jimmy Johnson brought Carvana, talks about, bringing some new changes, positive changes. But then it just seemed it got really derailed Richard Petty's comments early on. Then very early on, oh, they're switching to Toyota. So then Chevrolet, well, we're not going to exactly help you. I think some of the negative attention from Noah Gragson did not help it really at all. I know the Chicago race, that probably was something that Noah Gragson and everyone from Legacy will sort of want to forget, considering he made that turn six wall very famous. And then, unfortunately, when he had the incident online and he had to be gone, this was the opportunity for Legacy Motor Club to put in Carson Hocevar. He's been performing. They got John Hunter Nemechek. I think they have to feel confident that, look, we're getting Toyota support. Toyota only has 8 vehicles, so we're going to get more attention compared to being another one of the Chevrolet teams when you got Hendrick, RCR, Trackhouse there. So I think they have to feel pretty positive about next year. But this year, I would say it has to be hugely disappointing. And I think hugely disappointing probably for Jimmy Johnson, because he probably came in thinking we could at least get one win. We got the super speedways, Atlanta. Eric Jones, he knows how to win. Had a great first half of the 2022 season. Still missed the playoffs. And then this year, just like, I think probably the biggest flop of the year, considering from everyone's 2022 performance to this year.
And now, before we move on to Formula One, we've got a comment in the chat room. So Adam Lemery says, "Can SVG win in NASCAR in 2024?" He says yes. Alex and Joe, what do you guys think?
It's definitely possible. I think Chicago, everything kind of went his way because it was raining. It was a brand new track, and they had the single file restarts. Just a lot of new things that we hadn't really had in the NASCAR Cup Series. So I think he can. I'm not going to definitively say yes, though. I think if it's going to happen, it'll be on a road course, obviously. I mean, it'll depend where and what series, I guess. But yeah, he can. It's just he can have all the factors that he had at Chicago that went his way.
Yeah, a lot of factors in Chicago went his way. Can he win on a road course? Easily. He'll be, I would say, one of the top 3 favorites, especially if it's a road course race like the Xfinity Series at Portland, where you don't have the Cup Series. I think that could be a great opportunity for him. If the Truck Series, when they go to road courses, that's going to be a one where he's going to, I think, be the number 1 favorite, unless you have overtime after overtime and he gets knocked out. When it comes to the ovals, though, that's where I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he performs, how he learns it. I don't think he's going to get an oval win, but I think depending on which road course races he does, you can anticipate he's going to be a favorite, and I would not be surprised if he's in victory lane.
Now
Yeah,
that's
I'm
all.
very excited. I'm very excited to see his schedule for next year.
And now that's all for the NASCAR section. Alex, I'll hand it over to you to take us over to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
That's right. Formula One, they are in Brazil this weekend, and once again, it looks like Max Verstappen has an easy cruise to victory. However, we have a sprint race today, and Lando Norris is on the pole. Lando has Verstappen next to him and another Red Bull behind him with Sergio Perez. The run to the first corner is fairly short for Formula One standards. However, if Lando has a poor start, he could be in trouble with Verstappen on the inside line. So could Lando hold the lead exiting the first few corners and hold off Verstappen at the end of the long backstretch? Isha, what do you think?
Okay, so, I'm hoping that he's able to do it. And I think the most important thing is going to be as soon as the lights are out, who has the best reaction time. Because if Lando, he's already going to be in the front, right? But Max can cut in front really easy, and he's got Checo behind him to worry about as well. So I feel like if Lando gets a great lead into that first turn and is able to hold on to it, I think then he'll have a really good shot of keeping it until the end. But otherwise, I think with Max right next to him, it's going to be really difficult for him as well.
It's going to be very difficult for Lando. I feel confident he's going to get that better start. It seems lately Max is getting okay starts, but not phenomenal, great start. Lando, I think, could do that. Then I think it's going to be really a matter of what happens with that first 2 corners entering that long turn 3. If Max Verstappen side by side with Checo Perez or anybody else for some reason, this will allow Lando Norris to pull away before that long backstretch and break any potential of a slipstream draft effect to help Max Verstappen. But if Max Verstappen, single file, and they're entering turn 3, I think he could stay right there and he could give Lando Norris a great battle for the lead. But one of the big things I think is going to be, can Max Verstappen have that good start? If Perez, who's going to be on the same line as Lando Norris, has a better start, and those two are side by side, I think it's going to be, as you mentioned, Isha, Lando potentially running away with this.
All right, and now we have the sprint race later today. It'll have a more traditional top 10 starting grid, except both AlphaTauri made it into the top 10. Both Aston Martins struggle a day after a surprising qualifying effort for the Grand Prix. The sprint race has Mercedes and Yuki Tsunoda ahead of Charles Leclerc. So, Joe, do you think the sprint race will be a more accurate showing of everyone's pace this weekend?
I would say yes, it does, especially after what we saw at qualifying yesterday, where Q3 being essentially rained down and drivers like Lando Norris saying they couldn't put down a fast lap, everyone having issues. I think a lot of teams are going to be looking at this race, especially since everyone will be on pretty much the same tire compound. And okay, where do we rack up, especially when it comes to strategy for tomorrow's Grand Prix race?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Joe. I don't have much to add to that either. I think it's definitely going to be more accurate showing of everyone's pace. And, with the weather yesterday, obviously that definitely was a big factor in everyone's results for the quali. So hopefully with better weather today, I think it's going to be definitely easier to see the pace that we've, been accustomed to seeing in the past few races as well.
Now, one thing we continue to see is drivers slowing down in the pits, impeding drivers, and one big crash. So Fernando Alonso was slow on the outside of turn 3 with Esteban Ocon, got loose, went up the track and hit Alonso. Both cars were heavily damaged, and many said this could happen. So does F1 need to introduce more clear guidelines on pit road exit, in laps, and out laps? Isha, what do you think?
I feel like this is a bit of a tricky question because obviously, when you're looking at driver safety and the possibility of drivers getting into crashes, it would be an obvious answer to set up more guidelines, right? But then also, you have other scenarios where if, a driver does something dangerous coming into the pits, but it doesn't really affect anyone, and there are these guidelines, right? So if the driver's not following these guidelines, would they then get a penalty that could possibly, ruin their race? So I think it's not a very black and white answer, and I think that if you look at either sides of the coin, there's going to be something or at least a problem coming up with it. So, personally, I'm not really sure if that would be the best decision. It would definitely help to make things less dangerous, but, in the case that it's not dangerous, that would definitely affect the drivers too if they're getting penalties or other problems for not following the guidelines.
I have to agree with Isha. It is a situation where you could put rules, but I feel if you put more guidelines in there, the teams, they're going to try to find that gray area to expose the rules and all that. I do hope we do see some sort of change because I know right before we went on the air, Land of North was being investigated, but the chances of a penalty for some act infringements during the sprint shootout most likely will not result in a penalty. It's just those kind of things where it's like, okay, what's going to happen with the results? Are they going to change? What's going to happen? But then the incident today, I think this is just something where a lot of folks have been concerned about is you're going to have a car slowing. Esteban Ocon just got loose, chased it up the track, hit Alonso. That was a racing incident, unfortunately. But if there's a way F1 could prevent something like this, they could always look at different options. I think they would, but it's not going to be a clear, simple answer unless they change the format. And this format seems to be really popular with a lot of fans. I know we used to have the knockout qualifying where one car go out one at a time. That'll easily take care of it. It's a little bit longer. You don't have the exact same drama of waiting for everyone to come across the finish line at the same time. So overall, I think Formula One, they're doing the best they can. Will they look into changes? Potentially. But I think that'll be more for 2024. I don't think they need to rush to anything for the remainder of 2023.
Now you can watch the sprint race later today, but now let's switch over to the Grand Prix, which has Max Verstappen on pole. Charles Leclerc starts second, and in a surprise twist, both Aston Martins follow him, with Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, then Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris, all in part because of a shortened Q3 due to heavy rain. Today, Lance Stroll was again stuck in Q1, and Alonso caught up in a crash. So, do you believe other drivers are nervous about a first lap incident with Aston Martin up front with Lance Stroll up there, who hasn't been this far up the grid this year? Joe, what do you think?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm concerned that Lance Stroll, we've seen sometimes the mistakes he's done. He's gonna be up front with a taste of the lead. He could easily, I think, try to dive bomb three wide or go outside, and then that long stretch, I would be concerned. I mean, this is the essential equivalent of sort of a wild card, I feel, up on the grid. Alonso, I'm not too concerned about because he is a very respected driver. Everyone knows how to race him. But Lance Stroll, with all the rumors and everything, I feel people are going to get nervous that he might get in over his head, make a poor mistake, and could potentially ruin your race on lap one.
Yes, I completely agree with Joe here. I think the drivers won't be worried about Fernando Alonso being up there, but seeing Lance Stroll, that's definitely going to make them a little bit nervous, at least because Lance Stroll is sort of like a magnet for like bad things to happen on the track. So the drivers would definitely be cautious around him, and it's also up to him as for the decisions that he's going to be making because since he's going to be so high up there, do you think he's going to try to push himself even more to see how far high up he can go? And if he does that, what does that look like for the drivers around him, and could that potentially be dangerous? So if I were one of the drivers around him, I would definitely be nervous going into this.
So, follow-up question regarding to the heavy rain. There was some damage to the track too. Grandstands were damaged, and thankfully, no one was injured. But should F1 have called off this session earlier because of the heavy rain? Isha, what do you think?
I think they should have. Obviously, they probably had reasons for not doing it considering that it was a sprint weekend, so it's already a very busy and packed weekend. And calling it off might have, forced them to change around the sprint or whatever, but I feel like they should have because, the accident with the grandstands, they're very lucky that nobody was injured because that could have turned out to be really awful for them. And on top of that, even for the drivers, it could have been a lot more dangerous as well. I was looking at one of the post-race interviews with Charles Leclerc, and he was talking about how bad the wind was on the track and how it was coming in from like two different directions in Q1 and Q2, and then Q3 was just awful. So I personally think that they really should have called it off just to ensure the safety of the drivers as well as the spectators who were there to watch.
I agree. They should have easily, as soon as they saw those dark clouds, and those were some very dark clouds, the commentators saw that coming. They were saying, this is going to be huge when it hit. And all the drivers, they're putting on their fast laps. As soon as that track is damp, it's over. Nobody's going to go any faster. I felt F1 could have at that point, okay, encourage fans to take cover, the rest of the day is called off a little earlier. And especially with Formula One's exploding growth, Interlagos, they've said this is the 50th year of the Brazilian Grand Prix, and Interlagos has been part of the F1 calendar for a really long time. With the boom of Formula One, we're seeing more higher attendance everywhere, including there. That infield section, that has fans as well too. They are not covered, so I get it. Formula One, we race in the rain as well too. But with those storm clouds coming, you knew there was no way the session was gonna. It got nearly from day to night once those clouds arrived. I think Formula One should look into adopting something, maybe something similar to what NASCAR have with their lightning clock. If there's lightning within a certain distance from the racetrack, everyone stops, 30 minutes pass. In this case, once they saw that storm come in, they could have done a hurry up. Okay, let's get through the sessions a little faster. Granted, red flags are red flags. You can't do anything about an on-track incident, but I have to say I feel pretty confident in Formula One. They're gonna look at, okay, we got away. Luckily, that nobody got hurt. We gotta look into something next year, and especially you don't want a repeat like this when your sport is booming. Because if a fan gets hurt, that's just not a good look in any form of sport, whether it's motorsports or not, and that could severely hurt the image of F1.
Now, last year's race was won by George Russell. He was handed a penalty for impeding traffic in qualifying. Still in the top 10, but he has a lot of work to do. This year, he is yet to bring the results he and others had hoped for. Last year, he finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton, but this year, Lewis Hamilton is ahead. Today, he starts ahead of Lewis in the sprint race. So, are we in a case of a sophomore slump for George Russell, and any concerns about his ability to rebound for this weekend or next year to possibly be closer to Lewis Hamilton? Joe, what do you think?
It appears to be a sophomore slump. Usually it's your second year in the sport. Very common in NASCAR. Second year in Mercedes, though, expectations had to be high. You outperformed Lewis Hamilton last year. This year, it's not exactly going your way, and it seems like after Singapore, he's been one step behind. But I think George Russell will rebound. Look what he did at the sprint. Got a good lap in there. He's going to be starting ahead of Lewis Hamilton. When you got to remember his teammate, he's not racing against any other F1 driver. He's racing against Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time champion. This is the equivalent of racing against Richard Petty or Marc Marquez as your teammate. Great legends of the motorsport that have accomplished a lot. Overall, I think George Russell, if he's feeling down about the way this year has gone, that's understandable, especially after last year getting a win right here at Brazil. But he can't give up. He can't start questioning himself. The team cannot start questioning himself. Because at the end of the day, I think still, we know the Mercedes car was not the greatest. Has there been mistakes? Yes. Is he racing against a 7-time champion as a teammate? Yes. Just focus on what's ahead and try to rebound for 2024.
Yes,
All
I
right,
agree with you, Joe.
oh,
I really,
sorry.
think that it's okay. I agree with you. I think that it's definitely a case of the sophomore slump, and I think that it's partially also due to the pressure that he's experiencing. As you mentioned, he won last year. He's racing. His teammate is Lewis Hamilton, and then obviously the Mercedes has been a bit of a tougher car to drive this season. So I think that all of that is probably resulting in what's happening right now, but I'm not worried about him. He's definitely going to rebound from this, and I think he's still doing a really great job for the situation that he's in.
All right, so before I hand it back over to Joe, we have a little breaking news. I don't know if Joe has seen this. I checked my phone while you guys were answering that. Brad Keselowski is not going to qualify for today's Cup race. Cole Custer is going to drive the 6 car. Brad's wife is in labor, apparently. So, yeah, Cole Custer will be qualifying the 6 car later today out in Phoenix. But, Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you. It's time for us to pick a winner.
Yeah, time for pick a winner. Thanks for sharing that big breaking news. Of course, best wishes to Brad Keselowski and his family. Comment in the chat room from Dakota, NASCAR Xfinity Series. That's going to be later today. And of course, you can watch the recap of the Xfinity Series race on Grid Encore Monday. But now it's time for pick a winner here. Kobe still leads by 1 point. The top 10 is getting very close. We don't have that many races, but we still have plenty of bonus points. And this weekend, we have multiple questions, not just 2 questions or 3, but several. And we're going to start off with the NASCAR Cup Series for the race win. We want everyone to comment in the chat room. Isha, starting with you, who do you think is going to win the NASCAR Cup Series race?
So, I actually have all of this written down on a sticky note because we've got so many that we're picking today. So I just didn't want to mix any of them up. But for NASCAR, I'm going to go with Kyle Larson.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ryan Blaney, but any of the 4 could win it. I would not be surprised with any scenario.
For me, I'm going to go with a driver I think that's going to really be determined to get the win and embrace potential booze. I think Denny Hamlin's going to pull it off and be the first non-playoff driver to win the race. With that said now, NASCAR champion, I assume it's probably the same since it's the driver that finished ahead, but just double checking because someone could technically split for the pick winner points. Isha, are you going with the same driver or you got another person for the championship?
I'm going to go with the same driver. I'm picking Kyle Larson once again.
Now, Joe, that's cheating if you do that. You can't do that. No. Ryan Blaney, if you win the race, you win the championship too. Ryan Blaney, I'm not splitting for points. Maybe next year when I'm trying to beat Kobe with Alex F.
We don't have a rule saying you can't do it, so what's stopping somebody from doing it? Denny Hamlin, he was my pick for the race win, but I think we're gonna see. I think a surprise. I think the pit crew is gonna be too much, and they're gonna deliver. I'm going with Christopher Bell for the
Oh,
championship,
okay.
but mainly because that pit crew I feel is what's gonna make the difference. Now, enough of NASCAR. Formula One, the sprint race. Isha, who do you have winning that?
Let me just take a look at my post-it once again. Formula One sprint race. I'm going with Lando Norris. Hopefully, he'll be able to keep
Ooh.
that lead and just take it to the end.
I'm going with Max Verstappen. I'm boring.
For the sprint race, I'm gonna go with Lando Norris. I think he can have that great start. I think Sergio Perez will be side by side with Max entering that first corner and that second corner. So Lando's going to try to pull away. He just needs to have that lead by the end of the backstretch. Lando Norris is my pick. Now, the Grand Prix tomorrow, where Verstappen is on the pole. Isha, who do you have?
I feel like this doesn't really need to be a question anymore, but it's gonna be Max Verstappen for me.
You're right, Isha. That's why we have the next segment coming up in a second. Max Verstappen is going to win the Grand Prix.
And I'm making a name as Max Verstappen, but as Alex has mentioned, we have our pick seventh place finisher.
That's
The
its
way
own
the sports
graphic.
work,
Oh my gosh.
we made the graphic the way it works. If one person gets the seventh place person correct and nobody else does, they get the full 7. If you get 2 people, you split it. So Isha Matthew got 1 already. Isha, since she was on the air, gets the bonus point since it was an even odd number, excuse me. So Alex, since you're not on the leaderboard, you get 4 pick 7. You get to go first for the sprint race. Who's going to finish 7th place?
So I have Daniel Ricciardo getting P7.
Ooh.
That's a good
I
pick.
know. He
I
was running
think,
around there the last race. I feel it.
yeah.
He was fighting hard for it last time, so he's
Mhm.
gonna get one.
Yeah. No, I think that's very possible, likely. But I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri for the sprint.
I'm going to go with oh boy. Yeah, I think I'll go with Carlos Sainz 7th. I think he's going to just be there, but nothing a whole lot. So that's my pick for 7th place. Now for
And
the
I'm
Grand.
gonna give Daniel Ricciardo the clean sweep for the sprint and the Grand Prix. P7.
I am doing the same thing, and I'm going to stick with Oscar Piastri for the Grand Prix.
The Grand Prix, I'm going to go with a Alpine. I think it's going to be Pierre Gasly this time, getting 7th place. Some comments in the chat room. Adam, Norris wins Brazilian Grand Prix sprint. Verstappen, the Grand Prix itself. Larson wins the race and the championship, so he's not splitting the strategy. Jeff, new on
That's right.
YouTube, going with Blaney. Thank you so much, Jeff. Be sure to subscribe so we'll see you in the chat a lot more frequent. And Adam for 7th place, Danny Rick, and Sunday, Fernando Alonso. It's going to be a fun race weekend.
You get it, Adam.
And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this all changed up. And we encourage everyone, especially if you're not watching us live, still comment with who you think is going to win each race and finish 7th in each F1 race. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Don't miss any of our programs, including tomorrow, where we recap Formula One, NASCAR. Monday, Ben and Brandon are going to recap the ARCA West Truck Series, that race that seemed it would never end last night, and the Xfinity Series race today. Hopefully, it doesn't go as long as the truck race, but they'll recap it all on a shorter show that doesn't have overtimes. And of course, Patreon, Colin the Show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, they invest in us each and every month. You too can invest in us. We'll highlight your name in gold. We'll send you some Grid Network stickers in the mail for you so you can show off to your friends that you watch Grid Network. And of course, share Grid Network with your friends, families that love motorsports. And just be sure to invest in us, especially buy me a coffee where you can buy a cup of coffee and you can put in the chat room or in the coffee message who to send it to directly. For Alex Anderson at the Gay Racing Podcast and Isha Azim from Racing with Isha, I'm Joe Samdiego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.